Good morning. Today is Thursday, October 31st, and this is your community briefing. I'm Buncombe County Director of Communications and Public Engagement, Lillian Govis. Today, we will be joined by Corinne Duncan, Buncombe County Director of Elections, Clay Chandler, the City of Asheville Water Public Information Officer, and Hartwell Carson with the French Broad Riverkeeper. We want to let folks know that Hearts with Hands is doing a Thanksgiving meal and supply distribution on November 27th from noon until 4 p.m. This will be a drive-through event at the Hearts with Hands warehouse at exit 55 at 850 Warren Wilson Road in Swannanoa. You can register with at heartswithhands.org or call 828-667-1912 by Monday, November 25th at noon in order to sign up for this meal and supply distribution. Each registered family will get a complimentary meal, including turkey, sides, desserts, and drinks, plus a variety of essential items, including cleaning products, hygiene kits, paper products, non-perishable food boxes, baby and pet supplies, and more. So we'll start this off as we normally do with Buncombe County Manager Avril Pinder.
Good morning. Our community care stations are open every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with showers, laundry, and more. All community care stations are now ADA accessible showers and bathrooms. And laundry drop-off and pickup is available at the Swannanoa Ingalls. The locations of our community care sites are AC Reynolds High School, At Home Parking Lot, Big Locks in Brooks Mall, Buncombe County Sports Park, Bethel United Methodist Church, Ingalls, Swannanoa, Owen Pool, and Morgan Hill Baptist Church. Buncombe County registered nurses and a mobile team are offering free Tdap, COVID, flu, and Hep A vaccines at the community care sites. This includes the Ingalls at Swannanoa on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from noon to 6 p.m. and Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Buncombe County Sports Park, their hours are Wednesdays and Fridays for the Tdap and the other vaccines, Wednesdays and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the Big Lots at Innsbrook Mall, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from noon to 6 p.m. Again, they're offering free Tdap, COVID, flu, and Hep A vaccines at these sites. Update on the water and food distribution sites. These are open every day, and they're located at Skylanes Bowling Alley, Black Mountain Ingalls, Swannanoa Ingalls, Leonard Crump Shiloh Community Center, Pat Square Park, Buncombe County Sports Park, and Fairview Ingalls. The One Buncombe Call Center at 828-250-6100 is ready to answer any questions you have on Hurricane Helene. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, that number is 828-250-6100. An update from FEMA. The Mobile Disaster Recovery Center at the Buncombe County Sports Park will close today at 5 p.m. A new location will be announced soon. The Disaster Recovery Center at Cane Creek Pool continues to be open every day from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Some important information regarding FEMA applications. If you applied for FEMA assistance, you will receive a letter explaining FEMA's decision within 10 days. Read your letter carefully and stay in touch with FEMA. They may need more information to approve your application. If you are approved, you may get funds by direct deposit or a U.S. Treasury check based on which payment method you chose in the application. Your first payment may be for essentials like food and water. You could also receive funds to hire a contractor to provide an estimate for home repairs. Stay in touch with FEMA even if you are approved. If your situation changes, you may be eligible for further disaster assistance. If you are not approved, FEMA may need additional information from you to support your application. This will be explained in your determination letter, so please read that letter carefully. The fastest way to submit additional information is to upload to your disaster assistance account at disasterassistance.gov. You can appeal any FEMA decision or award amount by sending documents that show you qualify and need more help, like estimates for repairs, receipts, or bills. For folks who need supplies, the YWCA is distributing supplies like cleaning products, food, and essentials for babies on Thursdays and Tuesdays from 1 to 4 p.m. They're located at 185 South French Broad Avenue. And lastly, if you're looking for a way to support our community, there is a Red Cross blood drive at Pat Memorial Library in downtown Asheville until 3:30 p.m. today. Come on out and join us, and you'll even get a treat bag and a limited edition Red Cross Halloween t-shirt, while also helping restore a critically low supply of blood in our area. And now I'll turn it over to Corinne for an election update.
Thank you, Avril. Good morning. I'm Corinne Duncan, Director of Elections for Buncombe County. Absentee by mail is underway. We've accepted over 6,000 ballots, and we have 1,000 more for processing at tomorrow's meeting. Early voting is happening. More than 94,000 voters have already turned out, and election day is around the corner. In Buncombe, those numbers mean that nearly half of us have already voted. I continue to be impressed by the tenacity of Western North Carolina. You're making voting a priority. Despite the challenges that the storm very much still presents us, we're voting just as heavily as the rest of the state. We have long lines in Buncombe, but in fact, there are long lines all across the state. North Carolina is turning out. If you haven't voted yet, there's still time to return your absentee ballot. You have 3 days of early voting left, and election day is Tuesday. So let's talk about details. For absentee by mail, the deadline for requesting has passed. If you have a ballot, you need to return it by election day, November 5th, by 7:30 p.m. That means that needs to be in our office by that time. So don't wait, get them in the mail. You can also drop them off in person at any early voting location or directly to our office at 59 Woodfin Place in Asheville. And a near relative can do this for you as well. For early voting, there are 3 days left. That's today, tomorrow, and Saturday. We're open 9 to 5 today, 9 to 5 tomorrow, and 9 to 3 on Saturday. By law, the entire state must close early voting at 3 p.m. on Saturday. If you're in line at the close of day, poll workers will take your name and you'll be allowed to vote. In past elections, Friday and Saturday have been very busy. So if your goal is to avoid lines, get out there today. You can go to whichever of the 10 locations are most convenient to you, and you can check on the wait at our website at buncombecounty.org/vote. The locations are Black Mountain Library, East Asheville Library, Inca Chandler Library, Fairview Library, the Lester Community Center, South Buncombe Library, the UNCA Health and Counseling Center on Weaver T. Boulevard, the Weaverville Community Center, the Dr. Wesley Grant Southside Center, and the West Asheville Library. Remember to bring your photo ID or be prepared to fill out an exception form. If you don't have a photo ID, you can stop by our office and get one for free. It takes about 15 minutes. You can also same-day register during early voting. If you wish to do that, bring your ID and proof of residency. Election day is Tuesday, this Tuesday. It's finally in sight. Polls will be open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And if you choose to vote on election day, you'll need to visit your assigned voting location. If you don't know where that is, call us, visit our website, or take a look at the voter card you received in the mail. This card is just for reference. You don't need it to vote. Due to storm damage or use for emergency operations, 17 of our 80 election day polling locations have changed. They're either combined with a nearby location or we found a new one close to your old location, as close as possible. Monday, we sent those cards out to you to anyone who has changes, so you should be getting those soon. And you can also find a list of those changes on our website. And of course, you can call us or stop by our office. Again, polls will be open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And election day can be busy, but as long as you're in line by 7:30, you will be able to vote. In addition to your voting locations, an excellent way to find all kinds of voter information specific to you is by using the North Carolina Voter Search Tool. You can find that at buncombecounty.org/vote or on the North Carolina State Board of Elections website at ncsbe.gov. Through that tool, you'll be able to look where to vote. You can see the past elections that you have voted in, and perhaps most usefully, you can find your sample ballot to help you know which candidates to research. And you're also welcome to bring that sample ballot with you to the polls to make voting easier. As a reminder, on election night, those results will be released on our website beginning at 7:30 p.m. They are preliminary and will start by posting absentee by mail results. Next, you'll see early voting numbers populate. This might take an hour or two to complete that process. And then finally, the results from the polling election day locations will appear in batches as they come in from the sites. We estimate that all three of these categories, which is the vast majority of votes, will be in between 10 and 11 p.m. Again, remember these results are preliminary. After election day, we're still processing any absentee by mail ballots and that we received before the close of polls on election day, as well as any of the provisional ballots. We also audit during this period, the 10 days after election day. And once all of that is complete, our board will come together on November 15th to publicly certify the election and submit the official results to the State Board of Elections. So I'll be back on Monday for another update, but if you have any questions in the meantime, we're here for you. We are election services at 59 Woodfin Place in Asheville, 828-250-4200, elections@buncombecounty.org, and you can visit our website at buncombecounty.org/vote. Thank you.
And Corinne's going to stick around in case we have questions at the end of this. But next we'll turn to Clay Chandler with the City of Asheville Water Resources Department to tell us about what's going on with turbidity.
Thank you, Lillian. All right, so the reason I was not here yesterday on my regularly scheduled day to present was because I was out at North Fork most of the day, watching the treatment application process that started yesterday morning. And graphic here, so yesterday, contractors were able to dose 2 of those outside zones. Today, they will dose the other 2 outside zones and the area inside the curtain. Final curtain anchoring was completed yesterday afternoon. And so that area is ready for treatment. And here is some of the scenes from yesterday's activity. Now I'll go through my notes here. Start off with some good news. The weather conditions yesterday were pretty much perfect. The winds were perfectly calm. It was overcast. The water was pretty much still. It was overcast at North Fork. Obviously, most of the day, the sun peaked out late in the afternoon. But even though it was overcast, you could still see the reflections of the mountains in the water. That is a very, very good sign. That's a sign that the water is starting to clear up. Turbidity at the end of yesterday was 21.2. That was down from 21.9 at the end of the day on Tuesday. And that sort of tracks with what we've seen the past few days. Turbidity is dropping 6 to 7 tenths of a point every day. Now, we are obviously very, very hopeful that what you see happening right there, the treatment process will speed that drop up. I do kind of want to narrate this. There's the curtains being anchored. And we have some images coming up that shows the curtains in their final form that are very impressive. And so like I mentioned Monday. This treatment process will conclude today. We will measure its effectiveness over the weekend, and I think we'll have a pretty good idea by the time I'm up here again next Monday at how effective it was. And we will sort of reevaluate based on the data we have then. So this obviously is a very, very big week. The weekend is also very, very important that aluminum sulfate and the caustic soda, especially in the area inside the curtain, where we can sort of concentrate that treatment area, really is able to dig in and do its job and coagulate those clay particles into chunks big enough to sink to the bottom. I think that's the end of our video. And obviously we were under some very good supervision yesterday. The mama bear and her cub were very, very curious about what was happening. They seemed pleased, so we're happy with that. And we hope to be able to give them some more good news next week. I know that's very brief. I will keep that on a loop so you can grab those images and stills. And obviously, as always, this presentation will be available to members of the media, posted on our website at the conclusion of the day's briefing at some point this afternoon. I know you will have some questions for me after, but for now, I'm going to turn it back to Lillian.
Thanks. And finally, we'll hear from Hartwell Carson, French Broad Riverkeeper.
I'm Hartwell Carson. I'm the French Broad Riverkeeper. I work with Mountain True. My job has been for almost 20 years to clean up and protect the French Broad River. That job has gotten significantly more difficult and more important too. So in the aftermath of the storm, some of the important work that we have been working on is to try and assess the impact to the river. There's obviously an impact to trash, but there's a lot of concern about pollutants in the waterways, pollutants in the sediment. And so we're doing our very best to try and dig into those questions and answer those the best we can. I don't have all the answers today, but I can tell you what we've done so far, and we're awaiting a lot of test results. So we've taken about a dozen E. coli samples around the whole French Broad watershed. I do have those results, but I will say overall they're better than anticipated, considering what we know, that sewer lines are broken, wastewater treatment plants throughout the watershed are not functioning. So I was pleased that they were better than I anticipated. They're certainly not levels where you're going to want to go swimming, but they're not nearly as bad as I feared. We've also taken 24 chemical samples around the watershed. So that's sediment samples and water samples. Those are analyzed about 135 pollutants, a broad spectrum of all of the things you might find in floodwaters. We only have one of those results back from Marshall, but it was also better than anticipated. We only found 2 pollutants out of the 135. Only one is sort of harmful to human health. It was associated with petrochemicals, not surprising, with a lot of the oil and gas that was in the river after the flood. But the levels that we found were not particularly troublesome for human health. So I think that's an encouraging sign. That is only one sample in one location. So I wouldn't read too much into that, but again, encouraging. We've also taken a lot of well samples. I know Buncombe County is doing a good job with that. We've been doing some of those samples in Buncombe County, but also out of Buncombe County, trying to let folks know, if their well has been contaminated. We're finding about a 30% failure rate, which I think is better than what the state is seeing, which is not surprising, but good. And then we're referring those folks to the county health departments where they are, so folks can get those fixed. And we've held about a half a dozen river cleanups, so there is no shortage of trash to pick up. We're trying to do that in locations that are safe to access, and we're trying to do those once a week. We actually have a river cleanup happening right now, kind of going along the Greenway in Asheville. There's, it feels like a bit of a drop in the bucket, but it is a good win for the community. We go down, we've had, 100 or so volunteers at almost every cleanup. We'll clean up for a few hours, and at the end of that, there's a noticeable difference. There's still plenty of work to do, but it's something that we can do and something that we need to do. And we're focusing on areas that are, important for economic activity first, trying to get sections of river cleaned up where folks can, put their outfitting business can continue in the spring when the time comes. I think that's most of the important stuff that I have, but happy to answer any questions. Oh, if you want to follow along for important updates, you can check our website. That's mountaintrue.org, or our social media, Mountain True or French Broad River Keeper. We're posting cleanups, we're posting water test results on there, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. And I know throughout this, we have been communicating specifically about MSD and our wastewater treatment plant and how it was operational throughout the duration in Buncombe County, and was able to help with the treatment processes for our neighbors, as we kind of identified the structures and the repairs that needed to be done in the wastewater treatment space there. At this point, we will turn things over to questions from our members of the media who have joined on Zoom. You can either unmute yourself or put your question into the chat, and Angelica will read that for you. Clay is here, Corinne is here, Hartwell is here, and we also have City Manager Deborah Campbell, who is here from Asheville, if any questions relate to the city.
Good morning, Lillian. This is Will
Will.
Atwater. Hey, how are you?
Good.
I have a question for Hartwell.
You want to come back up, Hartwell? Yeah.
Hey, Hartwell, good to see you. A question for you related to some of the contaminants. You were talking about petrochemicals. I was just curious to know if there are any kind of fish kills or anything like that based on all the different types of contaminations that were converging on the river at once. Is that something you noticed?
Not to my knowledge. I have not seen any of that. We've done a pretty extensive tour of the watershed. I hadn't seen any fish kills. I haven't heard any reported. Floods are inherently problematic for aquatic life. So I think when Wildlife Resources goes back to assess the aquatic life, there will almost certainly be a dip in bugs and fish and aquatic life, but I haven't seen any broad scale issues.
Okay, thank you.
This is Ames Alexander with the Charlotte Observer. Question for Clay.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Ames.
Thank you.
Morning, Ames.
Good morning. So, Clay, I was wondering if you know of any other cities that were kind of in a similar boat and used these turbidity curtains to try to address sediment problems. And if so, how successful were those efforts?
Yeah, so there's actually a city in Minnesota that's using this process right now. Centerville, Minnesota is using this in their drinking water reservoir, the same solution of aluminum, caustic soda. They are treating their entire reservoir, which I don't know exactly how big it is. They're not treating small sections of it like we are. Their process, according to their website, is ongoing, and I don't believe they have posted any results yet. We do know that this process has been used for decades, at least going back 60 years. Aluminum as a coagulant in drinking water reservoirs is not a new thing. It's a technology that's been around quite a while.
And in Centerville, were they dealing with this as a result of a storm, or?
I don't know the circumstances that they decided to use this process, and they were using it to control not only sediment, but algae. This process will also eliminate an algae issue if you have that. But as far as why they were doing it, I don't know.
Thanks so much.
Sure thing.
Clay, this is John Boyle with Asheville Watchdog.
Morning, John.
Just good morning. Nuts and bolts. Could you tell us the amount of the alum and the caustic soda that y'all put in?
As far as the number of totes yesterday?
Yeah, and how many gallons they are?
So the totes are 300 gallons apiece, and each of the outside zones roughly require 1 tote each of alum and caustic. So 2 zones yesterday, that's 4 total totes. Same thing for today. And the area inside the curtain is going to require roughly 1 tote each of alum and caustic. So 2 totes today outside the curtain, 2 totes today inside the curtain, total of 4.
Okay, and previously you'd mentioned, the deeper water was clearer. Is that still the case? And I should have asked this earlier. Does that have something to do with the water temperature? Like, cooler water being denser?
Yeah, so colder water obviously is more dense, which does sort of slow down the settling process of the sediment. We haven't done a full lake profile since last week. I can't remember what day last week that was. But it did show that middle bottom, that rate of clearing had kind of slowed down a little bit. And the clearing had sort of started to concentrate at the top of the lake. And so because of that, we've been measuring our turbidity since then at the 21-foot intake.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, is if there was a possibility of taking water from the 50-foot one or the 80-foot one and getting that going for potable
That's
water.
certainly possible. And the next time we do a lake profile, which I think is scheduled for one day next week, if it shows 50 foot, 80 feet clearing up faster than the 21 foot, we can certainly pull from there.
And last question on the time frame. So y'all will be able to tell if this has been successful by the end of the weekend, you think?
I think by the time I'm up here again on Monday morning at 11, we will have a really good idea how effective it was.
And you may not be able to say this, but I mean, is there a possibility that this treatment in the curtains could take it down to that 1.5 to 2.0 sweetheart range?
We definitely want it to. Never having done this before, we're sort of learning as we go along. And if I get up here Monday morning and that turbidity level is between 1.5 and 2, that will obviously be the first words out of my mouth.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Clay. It's Laura from BPR. Good morning. In terms of so we have fixing the existing problem, but then not having it exacerbated by additional problems, especially if we see rain. And I should say we don't see, heavy chance of rain in the immediate future, but that could obviously change. Getting a lot of questions about kind of undoing some of the good that the treatment may do with sediment and silt coming from runoff. Can you talk about whether or not that is a valid concern and any method y'all are using to try to prevent that?
Sure. So a slow and steady rain that's straight down would actually help a lot to sort of speed up that settling process and that clearing process. Now, we don't need a thunderstorm where it's raining sideways with a lot of winds that's going to produce runoff. That obviously would set us back. Thankfully, there is nothing like that in the forecast for the next week or 10 days or so. But yeah, a slow and steady rain with no wind would help quite a bit. Not just our reservoir. I don't think we've had measurable rain in this area since Helene left, actually. So it's pretty dry. Everybody needs a very gentle and calm rainfall.
And in terms of subsequent treatments, you're saying you would know by Monday morning about how effective this was. And then is there any delay or is it an immediate second application if it's shown to reduce that number, but not enough yet?
So if we have enough data on Monday that it worked well enough that we're going to proceed with the third round of treatment, the curtains obviously will already be in place. We may be subject a little bit to the contractor's availability. Let's say the contractor is available and ready to go. I would imagine that process would move pretty quickly.
And one last question that's sort of for you, but then probably also for Lillian about the gastro illness that we heard the update on. I believe you told us before that that's, to your knowledge, not water related. Wondering if there's any update there.
No, still no communication from county health department or relevant medical providers that water consumption is driving any sort of increase in illness.
And that's correct. And I just emailed you back during this to let you know, we get that data from the state on Fridays. So we'll have more information about GI illnesses that they're monitoring it through the emergency departments tomorrow. But our nurses have not reported any new cases of GI illnesses due to, and it's not from water consumption, it's from hand washing and hygiene.
Great. Thanks, Lillian.
Yep.
This is Mark Barrett with the New York Times. I've got a
Hey, Mark.
couple of questions for Clay, please. Clay, sorry if you've been asked and answered, or if this question has been asked and answered before. I haven't been able to listen to all of y'all or watch all of y'all's briefings. Once the water at North Fork is treatable by your system, how long will it be before there's that water can be drunk by folks throughout the system?
So that's a really good question. Let's say we're able to start pushing potable water one day next week. We will kick off a flushing process, and the particulars of that plan are pretty much put together. We have to submit that to the EPA and the DEQ for their more of awareness than their approval. That process will take 2.5 to 3 weeks to replace every single tank and primary transmission line and auxiliary transmission line with potable water. To give you an example, put some kind of math to it. Normally, our total daily average demand throughout the system hovers around 25 million gallons a day. 20 million or so of that comes from North Fork. The rest comes from Mills River. Keep in mind, Beatree is offline right now, but we can pressurize the entire system just with North Fork and Mills River. That flushing plan that we will implement once the water is treatable is going to require a minimum of 27 million gallons a day. And so you're talking about some pretty serious water pressure through our lines, pumping into our tanks. When that starts, you're going to see a lot of fire hydrants open to sort of purge the system as quickly as possible. And so that flushing plan and the back end testing that we will have to do to make sure the water is potable in every part of the distribution system will take between 2.5 to 3 weeks.
Thanks. Follow up to that, longtime Asheville residents may remember in either the late 1980s or the early 90s, the city did something they called the Big Flush. And I think it was more to get sediment out of pipes and that sort of thing. As best I remember, and I've slept since then, it was maybe a weekend type situation. It took a weekend, more or less. Obviously, things, life's different nowadays, but do you know anything about that and why this would be so much longer in time?
In the late 80s and early 90s, I was still building every Lego set I could get my hands on, was not involved with the water system.
Okay.
Not knowing the circumstances of why that flush was done or what sort of sediment issues we were dealing with, there's no way I could speak intelligently about that.
Thank you.
Sure.
We have a question from social media for Corinne. Corinne, could you speak to why early voting hours in Buncombe County end at 5 p.m. versus 7 p.m. that we see across North Carolina?
Thank you. So the early voting plan was originally established in the spring, our original plan. And early voting plans, we take lots of public input and lots of data goes into creating an early voting plan. Once the storm hit, the State Board of Elections knew that the Western counties might have challenges with the plans that were approved by the state board and the county boards. And so they put in more flexibility into the plans to be able to build new plans. So our challenges were, of course, the conditions of the storm. So having roads out and our water situation, our power situation, all of that. We also had some sites that weren't able to be used, fire stations being used for emergency operations. And then also poll workers. We didn't have as many early voting poll workers available to us as we did before the storm. So staff produced a plan that we knew that we would be able to implement that included a reduction of hours during the week and then an expansion of hours and an additional day during the weekend. We did that. We proposed that for two reasons. One was to make sure that staff and poll workers would be able to safely get home in the evenings with all of the conditions that are still happening. And also communication has improved drastically since the time that the plan was proposed. But we really wanted to make sure that with these changes so close to early voting, that we were able to communicate the changes well. So being able to say 9 to 5 every single day, including the weekends, was advantageous. So we proposed that plan. All of the board reviewed it. It was it passed unanimously. And then that also went to the state board for approval too.
And another question from social media. What's your best advice for displaced voters who might be in FEMA hotels far away? They might have evacuated. What's your best advice for them?
So the absentee by mail deadline unfortunately has passed. That was on Friday. But if you requested an absentee by mail ballot, you can return those ballots to any early voting location across the state if you're in Buncombe County or any of the affected counties. Or early voting, of course, is still an option, and we have election day as well. So if you can get back, then we have those options for you. Lillian just wanted me to point out that for the early voting for our poll workers, we lost 30% of those. So we had only 2/3 of the workers available to us as we had originally planned.
Ms. Duncan, this is Mark Barrett with the New York Times again. Early after Helene, there was some speculation that folks might be, in particularly hard-hit areas, folks might be voting in tents and those sorts of things. What can you tell us about the new locations, and to what extent are they distant from places where people are used to voting?
Yes, thank you for that question, because election day is around the corner and we want to make sure that we're communicating those changes very well. Once the storm hit, we did a few things. First, we came together as a team and made sure that we could find everyone, that everyone was okay, that we were able to take care of each other. And that allowed us to turn around really quickly and start working on the election. So we had the absentee ballots out right away. And then we turned to the early voting plan and got that taken care of. That had to be done very quickly. So the next thing we did was turn to the election day plan, which is much bigger. We have 80 election day locations. That was a much bigger job to assess those. So we did some assessments ourselves. At the time, the phones weren't even working, so it was really difficult to contact polling locations. We were conserving gas. It wasn't practical to go out to the sites. Lots of road closures. So we had some significant challenges there in assessment. We reached out to the emergency management team and they helped us. And at first I was worried. I thought, oh gosh, I hope I can open at least half of these election day sites. But I was pleasantly surprised. In the end, it was only 17 that we needed to change. Buncombe County is big and it's cut into a lot of precincts, which means, and that's because it's based on population and topography. We have a lot of topography here. So that means our precincts are relatively small, which puts a lot of polling locations close to each other. So most of them we were able to combine with a polling location within a mile or half a mile to the location that was not available. And then we were able to add a few locations, brand new ones, and that was actually really nice. We had a lot of community members reach out to us and let us know that we could use their sites for election day. So that was very heartwarming. We also have one location, and that's out in the Garin Creek Broad River area that we weren't able to find a structure. understandably. And so we are working with state emergency management to put a temporary structure out there. And that's the only one that we had to do that for. I believe there's 7 across the region and Buncombe just has 1.
When you say temporary structure, is that a tent or a sort of a mobile, not a mobile home, but a mobile office, or do you know yet?
It's people, they say tent, but this is like luxury tent. It's got a floor, it has doors, it's heated, it has locks and security and lights. It's actually nicer than a lot of our polling locations. So I was happy to see that. I had hesitation with the word tent too. I didn't like that, but once I saw it, I was happy.
So it's kind of like glamping, I guess.
It's yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and just one other detail. Do you have a sense as to what extent these changes will deter some people from voting? And I think you mentioned earlier you'd sent a card or something out to folks. How have you notified people?
Yes, so anytime any voting location change happens, we send out cards. And there have been a lot of district changes this year. So our voters are used to getting these cards. They know what they are for and can review those. So that's one way that the change happens, or get the information gets out there. We also do events like these. So thank you for being interested in it and helping us get out that information. It's on our website. And also out at the actual locations, if people go to their old precinct, we'll have a sign that directs them to the new precinct. So we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. And also we have found that word of mouth has been really useful in these times. So we're really encouraging people to get information for their friends and families and make sure everyone knows what they need to do on election day.
Are you worried that some people will either get the word, not get the word at all, or show up at their old place, find that it's closed and just not vote?
I think that election day is a very popular thing, especially this year. People are very interested. They're very motivated. We can see just from the amount of turnout that we're seeing that people are very, very interested in this election, and they're seeking out the information, and we're doing our best to make sure that it's out there in many different formats: social media, radio, making sure that the newspapers and TV stations have it. We also have billboards that have the information on it. And then our traditional methods, the mail and whatnot. So it's out there in a lot of places. And of course, if voters have any questions about voting, we encourage them to come to us.
Thank you.
Take my sticker.
I want to illuminate one thing that Corinne shared. So if someone has relocated to Charlotte to stay with family or something like that to another county, and they have their absentee ballot, they can turn that absentee ballot in at that county. They don't have to send it back to Buncombe County. So that's huge and that's different. And that's a very active way that the state is trying to help us make sure that everybody gets to vote. Any additional questions? Don't forget, over the weekend, we get to fall back. And so we're going to set those clocks back an hour. With that time change, Buncombe County Schools is going to resume its regular schedule. So no more delay. Set the alarms a little bit earlier, Buncombe County Schools families. Again, we will not have a community briefing tomorrow. Our Board of Commissioners is going to meet at 11 a.m. to discuss Hurricane Helene recovery funding. And we will be streaming that on our Facebook page at facebook.com/BuncombeGov, which I know lots of people are watching right now on that. We'll be back on Monday with more important updates, turbidity watch, elections update. If you're missing us over the weekend, look for updates at buncombecounty.org, our social media pages. through BC Alerts, which you can sign up for by texting BC Alert to 99411. And we send out election alerts on that too. So that's another way that we're reaching out to voters. But we will look forward to seeing y'all right back here on Monday at 11 a.m. Thank you.